Pope Francis says, there is, for example, a large Catholic television channel that has no hesitation in continually speaking ill of the Pope. I personally deserve attacks and insults because I'm a sinner, but the church does not deserve them. They are the work of the devil, end quote. So let's talk about gaslighting. It's a strategy that psychopaths use on normal people to overpower them, to fool them. Basically, what happens is they keep telling you that you are the crazy one. The problem is with you, not with them. Abusive people always do this to other people. Now, in these quotes, there are three examples of gaslighting. The first is that the Pope is the one being attacked and that the Pope is the church. We'll look at that in a little bit. The second is that whenever Pope Francis speaks of the devil refers to his critics or those who are opposed to him and his friends, right? So, the devil is not in Germany promoting heresy or the blessings of unnatural unions. The devil's not with Pachamama. The devil's not with McCarrick or with all these other things. The devil is with his critics. So you would think with this rhetoric that the demonic, the devils are circling with their pitchforks at EWTN, not the German Conference of Bishops, not the Vatican Bank, not the Pachamama playground in the Vatican Gardens. No, the demons, the devils are the critics over at EWTN. And then the final one is towards the end. I read it at the beginning. I'll read it again. He says, I sometimes lose patience, especially when they make judgments without entering into real dialogue. I can't do anything there. However, I go on without entering their world of ideas and fantasies. I don't want to enter it, and that's why I prefer to preach. So he says, look, I sometimes lose patience with these people when they make judgments. But he says, I can't do anything about it because they make judgments without entering into real dialogue. So he's saying the problem is with them because the problem with them is that they don't enter into dialogue with me. When Cardinal Zen came to the Vatican to speak with the Pope, he was not given dialogue. When the Dubia Fathers, especially Cardinal Burke, sought out audiences to discuss the theological problems of the Dubia, they do not get dialogue. They do not get admitted into the papal circle. And yet he gaslights and says, well, they make these judgments, but they're not entering into dialogue, so there's nothing I can do about it. You'll notice when people really don't like you, for whatever reason it could be jealousy, it could be a rivalry, it could be a misunderstanding in the past, they create scenarios that place the guilt and the blame on the other party, especially when they talk about it with other people and in public. This sometimes happens with ex-spouses. They will talk about all these negative encounters. They modify, sometimes change, expand the stories in order to vilify the other person to gain sympathy for themselves. And that's the goal of the gaslighting is you're placing the blame, the problem on the other person, and then you're calling for sympathy onto yourself. And that's what actually Pope Francis does 3 times in this meeting with the Jesuits in Slovakia. He says, there's this large Catholic channel that's continually speaking ill of the Pope. And he says, I personally deserve attacks and insults because I'm a sinner. Now I would pause here and say that Francis doesn't believe that. He says he deserves attacks because he's a sinner, but he would, if you said, oh, okay, well, what about other sinners, sexual sinners? Do they deserve attacks and insults? No. Not even conservative Catholics don't even believe that. So I kind of sense a sleight of hand here because I don't think he really believes that. But he says But the church does not deserve them. They are the work of the devil. And there is the shift. He's condemning EWTN, and I think he's probably referring here to Raymond Arroyo and the Papal Posse, because they are constantly looking at things the Pope is doing, things the Pope is saying, and they are critical, just as I am critical as well. Hopefully respectful of the papacy, hopefully in charity and love for the man, Pope Francis Jorge Bergoglio, for his salvation, in his well-being, in his physical well-being, hopefully maintaining all that. I hope you've never heard me say anything that would be hateful, derogatory, or disrespectful to him as a person, or especially for his office as Pope. Now, we have to be very careful, and I've tried to be very careful over the years on this, but I still occasionally slip. And that is when I say, or you say, infiltration of the church, corruption in the church, etc., we need to be specific, because what we really need to say is the corruption of the human hierarchy, the corruption within the leadership of the church. You'll often hear me say, in the leadership of the church, right? Because the church is the bride of Christ, and the church will be reformed and it will be purified over time, or quickly, who knows? Christ loves her. If you read Ezekiel, you read Jeremiah, you read the Old Testament prophets, you realize that Israel was often led into idolatry and sexual immorality by her own leadership, the king and by the high priests and the priests at the temple. And God would send prophets who would then rebuke the people, rebuke the leadership. And then if they didn't repent, there'd be all kinds of bad things like pandemics, plagues, economic collapse, wars. God allows these things to bring the people back. If we don't repent as a church, as a people, as a nation, God will allow us to be tested to bring us back to him. So those are the three gaslighting things here. Attack on a pope is attack on the church. So the attackers are not attacking his mistakes as pope. For example, putting a Pachamama idol in a church in the Vatican by the tomb of St. Peter. When they're criticizing that, the gaslight maneuver is, well, you're criticizing the church. And that's the work of the devil. The second gaslight is whenever the devil is mentioned, it's the critics of him. So the devil is at EWTN. The devil is with the rigids. The devil is with the radtrads. But why is the devil never at a parade in San Francisco? Why is the devil never at the German Conference of Bishops? Why is, we could name all kinds of things in the church. Vatican bank scandal. Is the devil there? Why don't we ever hear about that? And then the dialogue one. Well, these people make judgments about me all the time, but I can't do anything about it because they don't dialogue with me. Really? You really think if the Papal Posse on EWTN, Raymond Arroyo, Father Murray, those guys called up and said, hey, we want to do a private dialogue with Pope Francis over some of these details, do you think that would actually happen? No.